Hello and welcome back to GoodKnitKisses. I'm your host Kristen, and today we are working on the very popular pattern, the Clapotis. It looks like it's spelled Clapotis, C-L-A-P-O-T-I-S, and this is a very, very popular pattern by Kate Gilbert, and it is on Ravelry, and you can download that for needles, and it has been transferred, it has been converted and translated over to the Loom with permission by Charity Wyndham, and we have permission to film this Loom Along for you today. The pattern for both the needle and the loom will have a link at the bottom on our description. And today I want to go over with you how to do this. Now, you're going to need 4 balls of Premier Yarns. This is what I'm using, Premier Yarns Serenity Garden yarn, and this is a number 2 fine weight, and there are 185 yards in a ball. You'll need just a little over 3 balls, and you can use any smooth yarn. When I use one that doesn't snag, it's not, it doesn't need to be like a thick and thin or anything like that. It needs to be very smooth and a fine yarn. You also want to use either your Martha Stewart loom or your all-in-one loom, and this one's going to have 120 pegs. I like the Martha Stewart one, as Charity has pointed out, because of the different colors of pegs, and you'll see why in this pattern, but you can definitely do it with the all-in-one. Both are a 3/8 gauge spacing between center peg to center peg. You're going to need your about 18 stitch markers, and the color doesn't matter, and you're going to need 80 of the small pegs here and 40 of the gray pegs. And if you're short in your kit, because this may use all of them, you could use another small blue, but you may have to put like 2 stitch markers or a special marking on your loom to show you that that's going to be a quote gray peg. So you need 80 blue, 40 gray. You're going to need the 4 corner pieces, not the U shape, and those are 6 pegs each, and then you need 2 of the 12 peg short rails, and then the 2 longest rails that are 36 peg. So now that you have your tools together and your yarn, let's get started. All right, let's get started by assembling our loom. We're going to get our straight pieces together to make a rectangle, and we'll get our corner pieces together. Again, you don't have to loom on a table, but when you're setting it up, it is really nice to have a flat surface. Okay, now that I have this semi-assembled, remember it's not connected till you start putting pegs in here, I'm going to actually start on the very far right side, and we're going to start with a gray peg. And then we're going to put in a blue peg and another gray. Whoops, another gray. Okay, and then we need 3 more of the blue. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have those, and as you know, on this Martha Stewart loom, you have to really push those in there. Okay, so we have 6. We have a repeat of 6. So you need to repeat this pattern all the way around the loom until you get back over here. So these last ones are going to be 3 blue pegs. All right, so just keep going around, and if you feel like you need to just put in all the blue or just all the gray, you could. See, I've got 1 and then skip 1 and then 2 and then skip 1, 2, 3, and then you could put in all your gray like this, and then you could fill in all your blue later, or if you want to do the blue first, whatever works for you. Okay, so finish putting your loom back together and we will cast on. And one more tip while we're continuing here. If you do need help, now I have this this loom pick tool from Knitting Board. It's nice and big and thick, but you might need actually something to just kind of push these down. I use the back of this instead of a rubber mallet, and I just gently push down, and that gets them stuck on there pretty good. Remember that whenever you have a plastic loom, molded plastic does not always fit in every hole correctly, and it's good to just, sometimes if a peg doesn't fit somewhere else, it will fit in another spot, so just switch that out. All right, continue and we'll meet back up. All right, well, let's get started. And before we cast on, I just want to kind of go a little bit over this pattern. This is the PDF for the Clapotis, and it's got some links in there and everything. And of course, you probably want to print this off, and then you can mark off rows that we've done. And here is a close-up of the Clapotis. It's got these beautiful drop stitches on there. And there's a close-up that we'll end up doing, but you end up knitting. And you can't see it from this photograph, but it is just gorgeous, and it's got this really cool edge to it. I'm going to flip over here, and here's another detail shot. I go to this page. I want to tell you page 6 of the current copy I have actually runs over finishing on it. But this note here about how it can easily be adapted for a larger stole or smaller scarf in these ways, and it kind of goes over that. You can look that over after you're more familiar with the pattern. And then it goes over the setup that we went over. Now, I chose to put my my pegs in a different fashion, like where I started the gray. It really doesn't matter. I mean, she's starting the blue on a corner and then working her way around. I started with gray. It doesn't matter as long as you use it in the pattern that I showed you. So you've got the 3 blue followed by a gray, a blue, a gray, and then it repeats. And then it also talks about if your loom, other options, if your loom has at least 35 pegs, 47 pegs, 59, it just goes through all these, and then how many sets of increases and decrease rows that you personally need. So this is a really handy tool here. Okay, and then I think that's the last page here. Okay, so now we're going to go over, so there's the first page with the picture. The second page talks about the size, materials, the gauge, abbreviations, all that. Just download the pattern and you'll be able to see all that. The abbreviations will cover as we go over. And then you're going to have a setup row, setup rows, and you only do this one time. And then there's the section 2 increase rows. Now this increase section is 12 rows. Every other row is exactly the same. That's what this red section is. And then basically these 6 different rows here, the odd numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, those are going to be slightly different. Once you do one increase row section, you're going to repeat it several more times, and it goes over this. And what's really nice is it's going to tell you how many stitches you should end up with after you finish one increase section. So be sure and refer back to this part right here. And let's see. And then we have our straight row section. And our straight row section is what is going to give you the length of your stole. So you can actually follow these directions exactly, but for someone who's taller, I'm actually taller, and Charity had recommended to me personally that I repeat that a few more times to give it some length. And it's got some measuring advice in here. And you measure it along the left-hand side. And it still shows you how many stitches are on the loom. And then you have your decrease rows, and then you have your final row section. So we're going to get started on section 1. So when you hear me refer to the section 1 or setup rows or increase rows, you'll know in advance what that means. Okay, we're going to cast on. We're starting section 1, the setup rows. I'm going to make a slip knot, and it says to cast on in the center of the loom. Now the center of the loom, depending upon where you put your stitches, may not make sense, so you really want to pay attention to this part. When you see a section of 3 together, 3 blue, then you want to go to the right and use the gray peg here. So it doesn't matter where on the loom you start, but the center of the longest side is a preferred place to be. Now I'm going to actually, I'm going to leave this on here so you can see where the center was, but this stitch marker has no bearing on what happens, only that we're putting it in the place that the pattern calls for. And we are going to have 3 stitch markers ready at hand for this particular setup section. And now we're going to E-wrap this peg here. Now, when you see E-wrap, a lot of times people will double E-wrap, and that's really what happens, but that's considered the cast on for this pattern. So you're only going to really wrap it one time in an E fashion. Now we're going to go to row 2, which actually is to knit 2 and then half hitch. So I'm actually going to E-wrap this again. Basically, I'm just coming around the outside and knit that over. So it's not really, we're going to be doing U-knit stitches for our knit. So technically coming back this way, that was a knit stitch. And now we're going to go along the front again. See how this went around the front. Now we're going around the front here and hold it to the back loosely and knit over. So we've knit 2, and now we want a half hitch. And if you're not familiar with half hitch, you're basically twisting the yarn so that this working yarn is coming from the bottom of the loop and not the top. If you're E-wrapping, the working yarn comes from the top. So this is now locked in, okay? And I do have a slower video on how to do a half hitch, so if you need help with that and some practice, then see that individual video for the half hitch. Okay, so we are on row 2, and from here on out, we're going to be skipping the first peg in each row. So this first peg is going to get skipped. So skip or slip 1, and then we're going to knit 1, and then we're going to PM and YO. That's place marker and yarn over. So this stitch here is actually going to get picked up, and we're going to be careful not to twist it or do anything different, and we're going to put it on the stitch here. So now I'm just going to pick up a stitch marker here and place that on there. I ran out of my little ones on another project, so we're going to use these big ones. All right, so now we've placed marker, and then we're yarning over, and we're going to yarn over with the yarn in the front. So it's in the front of the peg now, and now we're going to make a U-knit on this next one. So we're going to knit 1. Okay, now we have 4 stitches on here, and now we're going to half hitch. Okay, so now we've got the half hitch on here. Okay, now row 3 is, this is also from here on out is, and all odd numbered rows. So we're going to slip 1 or skip 1, and then we're going to knit to the last stitch 1, 2, 3, 4 in this case, but you really don't have to count, because as soon as you hit the last one and you do it, now we're going to do a half hitch. So every row is going to get a stitch added. Now we're on row 4. We're going to slip and then knit 1. Okay, and then we're going to E-wrap 1, this gray peg here. And then we're going to knit 1 and E-wrap a gray peg. Knit 1 and half hitch. So we're half hitching every time. All right, now we're on the odd row, row number 5. Knit to the end. Okay, and we're going to half hitch. Okay, row number 6, slip 1, knit 2. So we've got 2 of these blue pegs. E-wrap that gray, E-wrap 1, knit 1, E-wrap 1, knit 2, and half hitch. Okay, coming back, row 7, knit to the end. Half hitch, row 8, skip 1, knit 3, all 3 of these blue. And if you're seeing the pattern arise, what we're doing is every time you see a gray stitch marker that is surrounded by two, a gray, I can't talk. Every time you see a stitch marker surrounded by two gray, those two gray are going to get E-wrapped. Oh, sorry. All right, and now we're going to place that half hitch on here. Okay. All right, so we're going to slip 1, and then we're going to knit 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, E-wrap 1, knit 1, E-wrap 1, knit 1, 2, 3, 4, and half hitch. Okay. All right, slip 1 and knit to the end. What you're doing is you're working to get the two gray pegs that surround the single blue to have a stitch on them on both sides. Alright, so now we've got that, and we're going to follow the directions now. Skip 1, knit 5, we're on row 12, 2, 3, 4, 5, E-wrap 1, knit 1, E-wrap 1, knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, half hitch. Okay, and now we're on row 13, slip 1, and then knit 1 all the way to the end. Okay, we've got a half hitch here, and then we're going to skip one, and we're going to knit one, and this is where we're going to add the last 2 stitch markers. We're on row 14, and this is where this happens. So we're going to place marker and yarn over and K2 tog or knit 2 together basically all at the same time. So we're going to pick this blue stitch up and move it over to the right, over to the gray. And what we're doing is we're working our way, and this is why I like to have the center one on here, so that kind of helps you remember. You're pushing that towards the knit 2 together goes towards the middle. Okay, so when it's on the left side of your work, of the center, then you work towards the right. SSK, which we'll do in a moment, does the opposite. So now we're going to pick up our stitch marker, place that on, okay, and then now we're going to do our yarn over, which is just in the front, and then we're going to knit these 2 together. Okay, make sure you don't have any straggler pieces. This yarn can split on you. Okay, so now we're going to E-wrap, now we're going to knit 3 and then E-wrap 1, knit 1, E-wrap 1, knit 3, 2, 3. Okay, and now we're on the SSK, place marker and yarn over. Okay, so that's taking place on moving the blue over to this gray over here, and then we're placing the marker. Now, I will tell you, if your tension is tight, here's a cheater's way to do it. So if you pick this up and you're like, this is too tight, I cannot get this over here, you can actually take this and skip over the back side, take your working strand and knit this stitch here to cause it to be loose, and now put it on the top of this peg here and knit over, and it causes that to be knit together, both of those. Okay, you've moved this over and you've got to place your marker on, and now you're ready to put your yarn over on and then do this knit stitch all together. And now we're going to put our half hitch on, and you're ready to go. It's now locked up, it's not going anywhere. We now have 17 stitches across, including this last half hitch. You completed section 1, the setup rows. Make a note of the timestamp where you are right now. You won't have to repeat this section, but you'll want it for the beginning if you have to rewind and replay the next section of increase rows. See you in a moment.